All right, everyone, welcome. I'm going to go to our slideshow here, and then we're going to start this wonderful. I'm starting this conversation with the opening slide for Janet Thompson of Janet Thompson Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine, and I'm so happy to be talking to her today. My name is Lorie Solay. You obviously are pretty aware of me because you belong to my Temple Loam meetup group, and this is part of a series of conversations that I'm having for you on your behalf to help you through, well, what's obviously an unprecedented time. But more importantly, it's just the continual evolution and awareness and understanding of how to take care of yourself. Let me make sure I turn my phone off. Now my phone is off. Good. Wonderful. Okay, so I just want to start out again by giving you a little bit of information on me. Again, recording and sharing, this is something I'm going to send to you after the fact. Everybody coming in, mics are going to be muted and your video is turned off just so that you can get the information initially, and then at the end we'll ask for questions. So starting here, I wanted to share again who I am, Lorie Solay, Solay Creative. I'm based in the Bay Area, California. I have a coaching practice where I have a bunch of different modalities, and I really say that my focus is around mental strategies, mental mastery, and spiritual development. So the other meetup groups that I have are conference training, which relates to stress and working on the nervous system. And then I'm launching tomorrow, actually, the self-care project for moms, which is really focused on helping mamas, especially right now. So I wanted to share that piece of it. And now as we get started, I want to welcome Janet Thompson with Janet Thompson Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. Let me stop share here and welcome her in. Janet, welcome so much. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. Let me I want to pin you here. Let's see. I'm going to make sure that I'm pinning your video so that I can actually see you here. Perfect. Yay. Well, we've known each other for quite a while, actually, and we collaborate in a lot of ways. And I'm super happy to bring your knowledge to the group today because I think a lot of people are really interested in bringing a holistic approach to their health and wellness. And I know a lot of people I talk to, just in passing, and even clients are not interested in getting on drugs. That seems to be a huge issue and prevalence for people, especially when we think about the addictions that are happening in the country and the world right now. So I'd love for you to kind of share how you got started doing this and a little bit about acupuncture. Where does it stem? What's the history behind it? It's exciting. So take it away, my friend.
All right. Well, hi everyone. It's nice to see you. And my entry point to acupuncture and Chinese medicine as a whole came when I had a crisis point in my life quite a few years ago. I was going through a divorce, and my mother was declining from cancer, and the stress was unbearable, really. And I went to a whole number of doctors to deal with my digestive problems, and everybody told me I was just fine and I was normal, and all the tests came back normal, but I didn't feel normal. And anybody who's been through a lot of stress can understand that the body does a lot of strange feeling things, even though technically you might be just fine. So I wound up finding acupuncture, and the reason is that acupuncture really blends, and Chinese medicine really blends the mental and the physical, the body and the mind together and one, and treats them as one. And I'd never had an experience where I went to a practitioner and I could say, I'm stressed out about my mom's illness, and my digestion is doing this, and my body odor is doing this, and my heart rate is doing this. And the acupuncturist could just take it all in and make sense of all of it and then help me out. So I was on acupuncture and herbs for probably 4 or 5 months. And then I had a blinding flash literally while I was on the treatment table receiving acupuncture, and I realized that I needed to move in this direction for my career. As you know, Lorie, I have a background in neuroscience and psychology, but I had moved away from that practice because I never felt compelled by experiences I'd had in the Western medical model. I'd had doctors who were fine. It wasn't that I'd had necessarily bad experiences, but I never felt seen as a whole person in the presence of a Western medicine practitioner that I had encountered. And so that model didn't fit for me. And so my career took other directions. But it was really receiving that care and understanding what it felt like to be seen as a whole human with both emotions and stressors and physical complaints that enabled me to see how beautiful and profound acupuncture and Chinese medicine are. So that kicked off my transition. I went straight away to school within a couple months of having that sort of vision of this is what I need to be doing with my life. That's really when I started diving into Chinese medicine. And once I went to school, I understood all the ways that the practice helps support the body. And I learned so much more than I had learned in my undergrad education about how all these systems interconnect, you know, how you might have a problem with your gut and all of a sudden your emotions go haywire. More things we'll talk about today, how you might have anxiety and stress and your immunity plummets. You know, these are real connections that Western medicine is also starting to look at, but Chinese medicine, by treating the whole body as one, can really support. And there are really simple practices that we can take from this medicine and do practice by ourselves at home. So we don't always need to be going to a practitioner for help. There's a lot we have the agency to do for ourselves.
I love that. I love how science, you know, as you say, sort of the blending of and really validating more of the holistic practices that, you know, a lot of people have felt drawn to. What I love and what I read recently was how science is actually beginning to understand how dis-ease, right, dis-ease first begins in the energetic bodies. And that's where acupuncture is powerful, because it's working through the power of the energy system, and you'll tell us more about that. But I thought that was fascinating how they talked about it. If you don't deal with it, you know, if we talk about, you know, from a more spiritual perspective, the layers of our energy, the mental body, the emotional body, and it just keeps coming to the point where it gets to the physical body. So I would love for you to talk about first the history of acupuncture, how it started, how it's so intertwined from an ancient perspective from feng shui and the four elements. Share that piece of it. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I also wanted to tag on to what you were saying about the layers. You know, because Chinese medicine developed over several thousand years, and China is an enormous country, there are many different schools of thought and many different types of practice of Chinese medicine. One form of Chinese medicine really looks at the layers of the body, actually. And for example, Chinese medicine thinks that if you're getting a cold, that it sort of comes in. You know, we think about how colds, for example, are transmitted. Usually it's through droplets, that kind of thing. And so it comes into your superficial layer. So this is where Western and Eastern medicine agree. It comes into maybe your mucous membrane in your nose. Chinese medicine would see that as this sort of outer layer. And then if the disease is not caught and addressed in time, or the immune system is not able to kick it out, Chinese medicine has this 6-layer approach where you can see that the disease moves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the body. And we see that in other ways too. You know, you might have a day where you have a big stressor. And so that's sort of on the exterior, you know, it just comes in a little bit. But if it's repeated, or if you aren't able to deal with it, that gets deeper and deeper into your system, and your body starts to hold on to that emotion. And then it starts to actually make your organs malfunction. You know, you may have heart disease, you may have gut problems. So that layered system is really a thing that we also understand in Chinese medicine.
I love the talk. I love the fact too of the layers, especially, you know, with the work that I do, the mental aspect of it, because you and I talk at length about how our thoughts create a chemical response in the body. So if we're talking about stress, and particularly right now, how much everybody's going through, and how important it is for us to really come back to the basics, really begin to build resilience, really understand how much the mental piece plays a role in our stress, because it changes the biochemistry.
That's right.
You know, and more on the, you know, more later, you and I can dive deeper into this later, but just the frequency of a thought too, and how it's connected to, there's frequencies of the organs. So it's just so fascinating, because we are all energy, right? That was Tesla's. You want to understand the universe, understand frequency, vibration, and there's one other one. I always forget the third one. Frequency and vibration. We're going to go there. So yeah, so the history. So China's a huge country, right?
Yeah.
Many schools of thought. So Yeah, share more
Yeah,
about that.
the practice evolved over a few thousand years. And in ancient China, they did not do autopsies on bodies. So everything they understood about the body came from a really deep exploration of observation, when people were living, and then afterwards sort of understanding what had happened. So it was basically thousands of years of correlation and deep observation. So, this person has these symptoms, and also, they have really dark and baggy eyes, and also their pulse feels a certain way. Also, they smell a certain way. They're giving off a certain body odor. And so you would pull all of these pieces together, the looking piece, the smelling piece, even historically, like at least in Tibetan medicine, there's a tasting piece, tasting urine to understand where the imbalances are. I'm not sure if that's also in Chinese medicine, but really looking at deep observation to understand how the body is tied together. And so over these thousands of years, Chinese medicine practitioners found certain points of the body that were effective for addressing certain conditions, or for certain imbalances in the body. So what we'll talk about later today are certain acupressure or acupuncture points, energetic points in the body that are good for balancing the emotions. And similarly, there are points all over the body that are good for digestion, for regulating the heart rhythm, for supporting the liver and its detoxification processes, for supporting the immune response. So this system was developed over a huge number of years, over a large area, and then different ideas were traded as people moved around. So I do both acupuncture and acupressure, which I'll talk about the difference there, and herbal medicine. And similarly, herbal medicine had an experiential origin. There were some of the herbal masters who would use themselves as guinea pigs, I guess, who tried the herbs and saw energetically, do they heat the body? Do they make the body throw up? Do they cool the body? What's their impact on the body? And how can we combine them to create a potent formula that also doesn't have side effects? And that's one of the magical things about Chinese herbal formulas, is that they're designed together with enough herbs that any strong actions by one herb are counterbalanced by another. So, when we get Western pharmaceuticals, they're so laser focused on one issue that they may cause havoc in other systems. But the Chinese medicine approach is you almost never give just one herb. You give a formula that has 4, 10, 15 herbs, and they balance each other so that the body can absorb it without freaking out in other ways with nausea or headaches or any of the other sort of common side effects you see.
Oh my goodness. I remember when it's been at least a decade, I think now, when I saw the first pharmaceutical commercial on TV. My husband was in the room and I was like, what? They're selling drugs directly to the end user? No, right? So I was just floored, because boy, talk about, well, we won't even go into that. You can tell how passionate I am about it. But you see these commercials and the first thing you see is, well, the side effects can be this and that and this and that and this and that. And you're like, well, the side effects are worse than the actual thing that you're dealing with. So, but I also want to say, boy, the original herbalists were certainly dedicated, because to be the guinea pig, right, to understand. But I know people who can eat something and right away feel it in their body. Like they know what its impact, they're that sensitive. So certainly, what is it, the most powerful drug you'll take is food?
Yeah.
Isn't there, like, right? So the history of, let's go there for a moment. I'd love to talk about the 4 elements, because that's a huge piece of acupuncture, right? Balancing the elements in the system. So where did that come from?
Yeah, well, so in Chinese medicine, we actually look at the 5 elements. So
5 elements.
Let me see if I can do this justice. So there's air, there's earth, there's fire, there's water, and there's metal is the 5th one in Chinese medicine. As to the origins, I don't know enough about how that system originated. A lot of Chinese medicine came from a couple different things: observing nature and weather patterns. So understanding how elements interacted and understanding how that reflects in our body, but also political systems, because there were these dynasties in ancient China. They understood and related certain parts of the body and certain ways of interacting to the power dynamic that existed within these dynasties. So it's just, we all draw from what we know. So that was another interesting way. They also drew from family structures. So we talk about mother and son relationships between certain elements or certain points in the body. Chinese medicine is really based on the principle of balance. And I know in your work, Lorie, you do a lot of work on balance as well, often more mental balance than necessarily physical balance, but certainly one leads to the other. Chinese medicine sees that the body is meant to be in balance. Western medicine sees this too. I always like to talk about the example of hormones. So in Western medicine, we know that there are certain hormones that if one of them gets out of whack, another hormone will increase to counterbalance it and to keep the body in homeostasis, which is the Western term for balance. In Chinese medicine, we talk about it in simpler terms. We talk about hot and cold. We talk about basically too much and too little. So you can think about something like thyroid health, where a number of women have hypothyroid, which means the thyroid isn't functioning well enough. Their body runs cold. They have not enough energy. That's sort of a cold and a deficient condition in Chinese medicine. It can also go in the other direction, where your body, your metabolism runs so hot that your body is actually warm. You might feel anxiety, heart palpitations. So that's the other end. So in both directions, your body's out of balance. And Chinese medicine would use acupressure or acupuncture and herbs to bring that back into balance and to even out the system.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about the energy system then in order to balance it, because we have the meridians and then we have the, what is it, the nadis, like, and then that might be Indian, but share the energy system in the body.
Sure. So in Chinese medicine, there are 12 major meridians or energy channels. It's basically understanding that there are certain lines in the body which may correlate with fascia in Western medicine. There's not a super clear understanding of this yet, but there are different energy channels. So for example, the heart channel originates in the chest near the heart, and it travels down the inner arm out to the pinky. And there are different points along the heart channel that have different effects for the physical heart and for the emotional aspect of the heart, which could be joy or anger. There are also different channels for the stomach and for the liver and for the kidney. Some of these correlate very closely with the Western medical understanding of those organs, and some of them have a slightly modified version. But these are also, there are 12 of these major channels, and then there are other points beyond those that are off or between channels, which might share characteristics of those channels. And so the brilliant part of this medicine is that there are over 400 points, acupuncture points, on the body that have different characteristics and that help the body move back into balance in certain ways. And so as practitioners, we are taught how to not only diagnose what's going on and what the imbalance is, but then how to use certain combinations of these points to bring the body back into balance.
Wonderful. Okay, so the energy systems related to the elements and hi, Gail. We just had a couple of people pop in. Hello. So the system. All right. So let's recap for a minute. It came from China. There are multiple, not modalities, but just differences in the way that it's taught or understood.
That's right.
All with the basic underpinning, right? Then we talk about the elements, the 5 elements, and how those, we want to bring those back in balance. And so you understand what, and when you diagnose, it's related to certain symptoms, like you said, that can relate to the elements of too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, right?
That's right.
The way that we're thinking about just being out in nature, how interesting that is.
Yeah.
And then when you understand the energy system in the body, so just walk me through, and I know this because you've helped me, but for the audience, walk me through what happens when somebody comes in. Talk about the initial consultation you have with someone.
Yeah, so we go through, when I first meet somebody, we go through a little bit of a lengthy process to go through a health history to understand the sort of major points related to health and mental well-being leading up to now, and then focus on whatever the main issue is. Often it's sort of a combination, like I have poor digestion and I can't sleep well, or something like that. All the while I'm looking at the person, looking at the skin luster, looking at the way the eyes are shining, looking at body motions to understand a little bit about what's going on for the person and already get a sense of where things may be out of balance. Then one of the things that we use for diagnosis in Chinese medicine is the tongue. So I'll have people stick out their tongue and take a look at the color of the tongue, the shape of the tongue, where the colors are in different spots of the tongue, and what the coating looks like, whether it's thick or thin or greasy or dry. And all of these will relate to the balance inside the body. So there are actually different parts of the tongue that relate to different parts of the anatomy. So the tongue gives a lot of information about what's going on internally. And then I'll also use the pulse. So Chinese medicine has 18 different pulse points on 2 wrists. And the left and the right wrist tell different information. And from feeling the way the blood moves through these pulse points in both wrists, I get information about overall emotional state. Things like stress, anxiety, fear, joy really reflect in the pulse. I'll get information about the cardiac system, the digestive system, the immune system, the sort of root energy. You know, we see people, unfortunately these days, and myself included, who have overworked to a point that their system actually has lost a lot of its fundamental energy, and we have to bring that back up. So using the pulse in combination with the tongue, in combination with what symptoms are you telling me that you're having and what kinds of things are you feeling? And then observation overall, again, sort of skin color, expressions, looks in the eye, all these kinds of things. They all fit together to form a fundamental diagnosis pattern according to Chinese medicine diagnosis.
So the fundamental energy, let's talk about that for a minute, because that would be qi, right? Qi. So share the sort of the more universal aspect of qi and how that plays a role in our overall balance.
Sure. So yeah, so Chinese medicine talks about qi, which is life, essentially life force. It's the energy that is in all things. And we get qi from the genetics of our parents, basically. So from the sperm and the egg contribute a certain amount of qi to us before we're born. And then we supplement it with air and food on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis in terms of air. So we have a certain amount that we're born with. We can either add to it by eating things that are healthful for us and being in a good environment. And then there are ways that we can drain our life force. And that's by overworking, over-exercising. Being in chronic pain really weakens the body because it takes so much energy to experience pain and to have that energy bound up. Being in a difficult emotional state is another one. Chronic anxiety or stress or fear or worry, overthinking, over ruminating. These are things that really sap our energy. And so we have to build it back up. The other important thing to talk about when we talk about qi or life force is that a lot of times pain and discomfort come because the energy gets, this may be a little abstract for people who are very Western minded. So I acknowledge that. And I came from a Western background, and I know that taking the leap is a little bit hard, but it does make sense. Pain and certain diseases come about because the energy is stuck in the body in certain places. So people may have experienced times where it's difficult to breathe deeply. Like the diaphragm literally will not relax. It's almost like you can breathe into a certain point and then no more. Often that's caused by an emotional imbalance, or sometimes it can be caused by another imbalance in the body. But the energy is just stuck, and we need to do something to be able to release that energy that's stuck in the diaphragm to enable full breathing again. Another way to look at it is these days, when we're all spending a lot of time online, we get a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders, and the energy literally gets stuck there. We can feel these bound knots. They're really palpable, and then they can create other problems. We might get dizziness in the hands, or we might get headaches, these other problems. It's another example of energy getting stuck in the body, or qi getting stuck in the body. So when we talk about balance of qi, it's not only do we have enough, have we depleted it, but it's also where is it in the body? Is it all in one place and we're getting poor circulation elsewhere, or we're getting ramifications such as pain or organ dysfunction because things are out of balance?
That is such a good point, because people know this, right? When you feel pain, you might have, as you say, sort of a chronic spot where, low back, like you said, neck and shoulders. It's very interesting to talk about it from that perspective. It goes back to the beginning when we were talking about how originally sort of that dis-ease comes from the mental, the emotional bodies, and then into the physical body. And then even language, which you and I have talked about, God, if you're frustrated about something, man, they are a pain in my neck. Well, what are you encoding in your subconscious that you're
That's right.
getting that person is a pain in the neck, and then they become an anchor and you're like,
That's right. That's right.
So how do we bring balance back in? Okay.
That's
So
right. And just to add on that, because I think it's really relevant for the kind of work you do, Lorie. One of the things that was ingrained in me early in school is how our mental state really affects our physical functioning. And I had this Chinese teacher in my school who, when we would take breaks for lunch or dinner, he would be very clear: no negative conversation, no reading anything that was disturbing. Eating time was for eating, and you would sit and you would relax and you would focus on taking in food. You would focus on taking in healthy food. You would be thinking about how the food is going to benefit you. And you weren't going to talk about, oh, what happened with this patient earlier today, or, oh, I have this problem in my family. No, because that mindset affects the gut's ability to properly function and digest the food. And that's all of what you work with all the time, Lorie, is getting that mindset back into the right place so that our bodies can then physically function the way they're intended.
It's the mind, the body is always in the present moment and the mind is always out. I always say to people, for most people nowadays, I tell them, and bring all of those parts of you back, because if you've got to-do lists and you're worried about somebody else, and it's like kids on a playground, wow, they're out scattered and running around and taking, so come to the door like a teacher and call them all back in, because that also is, as you say, it's sort of depleting our chi. So it's powerful. And then I just read an article, and I'm going to put this article in when I send this recording to everybody. I'm going to embed it in the email or embed it in the recording. They were scientifically talking about how what we think is impacting the way the food is getting absorbed in our body, something like that, which clearly, again, the power of our mindset, the power of our language, the power of our emotions, and how they impact the balance of the body. So when you go to the meridians, you said you have the 12 meridians in the body.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? So when you're using the needles or acupressure, which you can talk about, because I know you work a lot with young kids, so you're going to be using, so share more about that part of it.
Yeah, let me talk first and just explain the difference between acupuncture and acupressure. So they both use the same physical spots on the body, the spots where we know we can make change. So there's, for example, there's one spot here, right, in what's known as the third eye spot in some cultures. If we're doing acupuncture, we'll take a very thin needle, basically a sort of hair's width or maybe just a teeny bit wider, and we will actually put a needle in that spot to create change. We'll poke under the skin. That creates a pretty strong response. If we're working with someone who's afraid of needles or someone who's really young, we'll just use manual pressure, or we'll use a small metal tool, typically, that doesn't puncture the skin. It's literally just manual pressure or physical pressure on that spot, which still creates the change. It's just a lower dose. And for some people who are sensitive, actually too much of a dose sort of takes the balance and throws it the other way, and it's too much. So I often have parents come in saying, please use needles on my child so we get the best result. And the answer is, it's not that more is better. We definitely in the US have a more is better feeling about just about everything. And
yes,
with acupressure,
supersize the acupressure or acupuncture, right? No supersizing.
Yeah, and that's actually, it can be dangerous in certain cases. We really want to get the dose appropriate to what's going on. So certainly for kids, but also for our at-home technique, just using pressure instead of the actual insertion of needles can be just as much or the appropriate dose. So what happens, Western medicine hasn't really figured out entirely what goes on and why acupressure and acupuncture work the way they do. But what we do know is that, at least for acupuncture, putting the needles in the body in certain places creates changes in the brain. It actually causes the release of certain neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are the little molecules in the brain that move from one spot to another that create change within our brain. So acupuncture can create the release of endorphins, and those are the feel good, feel less pain chemicals in the brain. That's like the runner's high chemical neurotransmitter. It can create the release of serotonin and dopamine, both of which are involved in the sense of well-being, right? So if you are suffering from depression or anxiety, actually getting modifications to the amount of serotonin and dopamine in your brain can be really crucial. So we know that neurotransmitters are released with acupuncture. Why certain points work exactly like they do, what other mechanisms are involved, we don't totally know yet.
Well, we will know probably very soon because science is making inroads to it. And there's, you know, psychoneuroimmunology. There's a lot of different new branches of medicine that are really wanting to understand and bring in the holistic feature. You know, I know that there's several doctors that I know, good friends of mine, who are super interested in, I want to blend everything. Yeah, we have, you know, we have the access to sort of emergency care. We want to be able to help people with drugs when they need it, but we would prefer to help them to create a more holistic wellness lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the body is incredibly powerful. Like the body knows it wants to come back to homeostasis, as you say. It wants to come back into balance. It's always working to get back into balance. Yet we get in the way of that. We get in the way.
Right.
So when you put the needle in, so let's talk about the meridian. And I've had, you know, I've started actually with acupressure when I was in my early 20s. And I'll tell you, a couple of the experiences were so powerful. I remember when she was working, you know, and she basically, she would get under the back and she'd find those little sweet spots. And one time on the table, I was dozing, which is perfect, right? I was just like letting it all come in. And it felt like somebody plugged a power cord into the bottom of my feet. It was like, zzz, you know, and it was just an electrical charge.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt at all. I actually felt kind of good. And I woke up and I'm like, what the heck was that? And then she had to explain. And then I clearly had acupuncture with you, which has been beautiful and amazing. And just, you know, the sense of well-being that comes from it when you're really doing that kind of work. So the needle goes in, okay, which I don't really feel the needles, which is great, right? So the needle goes in, it's releasing, let's talk about this from a scientific perspective as much as we can. It releases the neurochemicals in the system. So on that meridian, what's the intention? Is it the intention to get the energy flowing? Like explain how when you're using those points, what happens?
Yeah, so it depends what the it is. So for example, we'll take two examples that we sort of talked about before. So one, say I have shoulder pain. I might be putting needles in and around the shoulder and then further down the arm. And the intent is really to use that single meridian to move the energy that's stuck in the shoulder through the arm and out through the hand, and just to get whatever's stuck moving out. Another way to think of it, some of the meridians that are commonly used on the leg are used to give more energy to the system. So it's not so much that we need to move. It's like those points help to access an increase in energy. So you put the needles in a couple of these really key, powerful spots in the legs, and the body actually begins to generate additional energy. Why and how that happens, that to me is a little bit more difficult to explain. Are those points sort of nodes where the mitochondria, you know, succeed better? Are there just strong impacts in the gut from those places? I don't really know what the answer is. Or are those hormonal cascades that we just don't understand yet? You know, we're not sure.
Right. And that's with science is only what, 300 years old. I mean, it's a Western science, you know, science in general, the study in the way that we look at it is very young compared to the thousands of years of the knowledge that's coming from acupuncture, from you know, from a lot of the ancient cultures. So that's interesting. I remember too reading something recently about just even electricity. Electricity isn't something that's in the wall, it's all around us. Right. But it's just sort of channeled into the little outlet that you put the plug in. So again, when we think about chi or prana, it exists all around us. In fact, they say one little tiny aspect of energy here, if we knew how to tap into the amount of energy that's in this little piece of my fingers, could boil all the oceans on the planet to tap it. So again, if we're all energy, like how interesting, it's just so fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, my my Reiki healer that I work with, who you know, Tamara Nakjavani, she likes to talk about ways to get good chi. And so we think about, you know, what in our life and our lifestyle is building positive energy for us and giving us life force. She talks about, yes, eating a good meal, watching a movie that makes you feel good, performing an act of kindness, going to the ocean. All of these things bring so much good energy to us. And then you can think of the flip side, right? Times where you have negative interactions with people. You're eating very poor quality food. You watch a movie that's terrifying and it drains you. You know, so there are ways, there are all sorts of ways we can think energetically about what's going on and what's helpful for us and then what's not helpful for us. And I think one of my concerns about what's been going on during this pandemic is that, rightly so, we have so much Western medical information coming out, and I'm so grateful for it, because this is certainly a time where you need Western medicine to be identifying what's going on and helping to work on vaccines. That said, I think a large piece of the picture that we're missing is what goes into immunity. You know, Western medicine does know that exercise, mild exercise promotes immunity. Eating a variety of vitamins from a wide variety of fruits and vegetables supports immunity. Lower stress supports immunity, right? We actually know these things, and they've been shown through research, through Western research, but it's not, when you read the newspaper, you're not reading, you know, look at these people who are doing all these things to support their immunity, and here's how. And it's a whole piece. We're instead being thrown into this fear complex, which is a very negative emotion that actually drains your chi. It drains your life energy. And we're not finding ways in the cultural dialogue to focus on the positive ways that we can support ourselves and our families and our communities.
That is exactly why we're talking today, because we want to be the force for positive change, and we want to inspire and educate people that they are truly powerful. So I want to round out this part of it and then start to move into some of the things that people can physically do. But I love how you pointed that out, that the fear complex, you know, the doom scrolling, if we're not consciously aware of how we're allowing our attention to be focused, it's going to continue to drain our energy, right? So doom scrolling, all of the things that people are doing right now because they're worried, yet there are so many good pieces of information out there that we have a lot of control. We certainly have a lot of control. You know, just eating, I love the fact that there is this huge movement to grow your own food, because live food from the ground, talk about chi, right, has the most chi to fulfill the body. Just got back from Mount Shasta, Janet. You know, we've collected water from the water right out from underneath the mountain. Live water, good live water. The water that comes into our tap is dead water. So how do we continue to educate ourselves? Take a deep breath, right? Get that diaphragm working, right? Breathe down to the belly, really relax and get into our system and recognize that we can come back to basics and be good. So let's go there. Let's go with the anxiety and stress. Like what, because that was one of the topics today. What different sorts of strategies and methods are you sharing now with the audience today regarding
anxiety and stress?
And anxiety,
Yeah, well, and just to loop back again to the importance, so anxiety and stress are not only incredibly difficult to deal with on a personal level. You know, it's miserable to be in a state of high anxiety. It's miserable to be in a constant state of stress. We know that, but it also has longer term impacts on our health. And we know Western medicine knows that there can be impacts to gut health. You know, things like IBS are common when there's a high state and a continued state of anxiety and stress. Cardiac health is impacted, and the immune system is impacted when all the resources are being gobbled up by the mental activity, the fast heart rate, all the other biological processes that happen with anxiety and stress. It does cause longer term damage. And that's why it's so important that you're doing the work you're doing, Lorie, in terms of mental mindset around anxiety and stress, and that people have some take home tools. So I'd love to talk about a handful of things. We can go in any order, but I do want to talk about a couple acupressure points that people can do at home for anxiety and stress. There are essential oils that can be helpful because, as you know, Lorie, scent is like a direct line into the brain, and there are certain essential oils that are known to create a calming effect on the nervous system. So those are important. There are things we can take internally, flower essences, herbal teas that can help, again, calm our nervous system. And all of this is in the goal of making our system healthier, function better, and therefore enhancing our own immunity.
Perfect. So we have about 15 minutes. Let's
Great.
start to move into the different kinds of strategies and methods that so take it away, my friend. Where would you like to begin?
Great. Well, let's just do a few acupressure points to start. And I know you know some of these, Lorie, but I know our audience doesn't know all of them. We already talked a little bit about the third eye point. And so this is a point that in between the eyebrows, right at the center above your nose, is a point called, well, it's called yin tong in Chinese medicine, and it's known in the third eye in other cultures. And when you press this area, you can either press and hold, you can rub it a little bit, or you can actually sort of pulse on and off with pressure, whatever feels most calming. For me, kind of just steadily holding this point is great. So this point is known to affect the heart energy in Chinese medicine. And so that means it provides some calming. So if you're experiencing anxiety, palpitations, agitation generally, use of this point is really powerful. I tell people generally with acupressure, you know, you don't have to press super hard on the point, just enough that you'll feel it. 30 to 60 seconds at a time is fine. For cases like anxiety and agitation, I often think that pressing a little longer is good. One thing you can do, I'm looking if I have an object. I don't have an object with me right now. If you have a small object and you lie down, you can just place a small object on this spot and it will stay. And as you lie down, you can focus on breathing into your belly, working on getting some calm, you know, setting an intention to be calmer, and just place an object right in this third eye spot. So that's one of my favorite easy go-to spots.
I love that. And I think they can even go out to their garden and find a beautiful little soft pebble, right? And they can put it there. And I love how you're also incorporating a mantra. So, you know, find a word that is really soothing, as you say, calm, calm, right? You're instructing yourself while you're using that spot. And I can kind of feel a little bit of a divot, like right, you know, right, you can, I know, you know, I've had to, you know, looking for certain points where you can kind of feel a little bit of the soft spot, right? So that's okay.
Right.
So that's one. Okay, that's one. All right.
One. Another one of my favorite heart points is on the hand. And Lorie, I know you know this one. What you do is you make a loose fist, and then where your pinky hits the palm, that's where the point is. So it's in the soft, fleshy spot between the bones connecting the fourth and fifth fingers here. So just where that pinky lands. And then again, you can hold, usually I press with the thumb and hold the hand. This point is also on the heart channel. We talked earlier about how the heart channel runs from the chest through the inner arm and out through the pinky finger. This point is used for flares of anxiety and agitation, really, heart palpitations, all of that. So it's a good resource to press on. And again, you can breathe 30 to 60 seconds. You'll want to use both hands. You can trade off. And this, I think of this really as a rescue point. So when you're having your especially bad moments, to press on that and to breathe and set the intention of letting that anxiety and agitation leave out through the hand.
So I'm going to encourage you, my friend, to put a little worksheet together. I love that. The rescue points, the quick rescue points, you know, that can help you to bring more calm, you know, relax the body with anxiety. There was some, you know, these points here I've always tapped on right here at the collarbone. I remember when I was having anxiety attacks when I was in my 20s. I started doing this point. Is this a point you also recommend?
Yeah, there are a number of points actually. So I'm wearing the wrong shirt for this. If you go a little bit below the collarbones,
okay,
and then you can usually feel your sternum here if you go to the side of the sternum. So acupressure is basically never on top of bones. It's always in the soft, fleshy part.
Right.
If you go below the collarbone and to the side of the sternum, there are a bunch of sensitive points, and you can feel them between the ribs. So there's actually a couple that are right below the collarbones. And then if you pass a rib, zoop, into another divot, zoop, into another divot. Basically, these top 3 or 4 points, you will feel whether they feel right to you. These are all various emotional support points. For me right now, the most sort of tender, sensitive ones are right near the top, but it might vary depending on what you have going on. And you can either tap on them, as Lorie's doing, and again, setting an intention to release negative emotion, to release grief, to aid in calming, to aid in deep breathing. I do think the intention setting and the steady breathing is important. If tapping feels good, that's great. If holding or massaging feels good, that's great. And again, all these points on the chest are prime points that if you want to lie down and put objects on them, or just rest your hands there while you're breathing, you can help yourself relax. You can put an object here, you can put 2 objects here. And then I have one more favorite point that I'd like to show. Let me turn the camera down a little bit. There's a point that's right on the center line of the sternum, and it's around sort of the 4th rib if you count down. It's also on the line of where the nipples are if you're lying flat. For men, it's easy. Women, it's a little harder. But usually you can find that spot by just moving down along the center line until you hit a sort of sensitive spot right in the center of the chest. And this is another link to the heart channel. This point is calming, and it helps to regulate what emotions are really getting deep in and what's ready to release out. So it's a little bit about the protective layer around the heart. Oh, calm. It's another great point that you can rest an object on if you're lying down, or that you can just press and hold when you're having difficulty breathing, agitation, anxiety, any of these complicated and uncomfortable feelings.
This I love. First of all, I want to honor zip, zip. I love all the little sound effects. Zip, come down, zip, come down. So that spot right there, like you modeled it for us. When you're doing this, you're training the body, you're teaching the body what to come back to. So the more you do it, the faster you'll get. I notice, like you said, the faster you get the response. So those, okay, so let's review. So here.
Yep. 3rd eye point.
Yep.
Where the pinky
below, exactly.
These points to the side of the sternum under the collarbone where it may be tender. And then in that center point of the chest, right along that center line.
That one's really good. I like that one in particular because you sort of honored the fact that there's a lot of emotions happening right now, you know, and rather than stuff it down, just let it, you know, I've grabbed the pillow and sort of cried into the pillow, or, you know, find a way to just sort of release and let it go. Journaling, you know, after you've done these points, it's so good to just even journal it out. Such a super helpful way to get some relief and to create some resilience and more stability mentally and emotionally. I would love for you to talk. I always recommend the ear because the vagus nerve we're talking about. So share how it's important to really regulate, sort of tone the vagus nerve. We can talk about the nervous system for a minute.
Yeah. So the vagus nerve, and sorry, one other thing on the acupressure bit, following on your really helpful point about journaling. Also, any emotional release that comes from using these points is beneficial. So, you know, in Chinese medicine, we understand that physically letting go of the emotions is incredibly beneficial, whether it's crying, whether you wind up laughing for some unknown reason, whether you're yawning or sighing. Yawning and sighing are, in Chinese medicine, ways to adjust the qi, right? You're letting the breath move energy around. So yawning and sighing are great. Taking a nap afterwards is great. Whatever your body is doing to help itself regulate after using these points is beneficial. So I just wanted to point out, if any of those things come up, great, you're on the right path.
I love it. Let me share something too, because our family has had a pet care business forever and a day. And you watch dogs. Dogs and cats, right? They know how to be active and then relax and then eat and then active and relax. But one of the things that dogs will do when they're feeling a little anxiety is they'll yawn. So you'll notice they're like, so just like you said, it's sort of releasing and letting go of the energy. And yawning is also a good way to tone the vagus nerve. So
yes, good transition.
So go there for us. Go there with the vagus nerve, the nervous system, and I love the ear points.
Yeah, so the vagus nerve is the connection between the brain and the gut, and it has a very strong connection to the nervous system. And we know experientially, but we also know scientifically, that when your body is under a high amount of stress, it redirects energy away from the gut. So when you're under a high stress response, your blood flow is shunted to the muscles so that you can be active and deal with the stressor, and it's shunted away from the digestive system. So when you're under prolonged periods of stress, your digestive system actually isn't getting the nourishment from the blood flow, and it's often not moving the food down properly and absorbing properly. So getting the vagus nerve using the vagus nerve to relax the nervous system helps you then not only decrease your stress load, but then properly digest your food, which has a whole nother range of positive health benefits when you're actually absorbing nutrients from your food, and not letting it all sort of rush through your system. So there are a number of spots in the ear, it's maybe a little hard to show, but let's see if we can do it, that connect to the vagus nerve. So most people's ears are kind of the same. You will have this little divot. So most people have this part called the tragus, which sticks out into the ear, and above it, it sort of divides the upper part of the interior ear and the lower part of the interior ear. And most of the points that connect to the vagal nerve are in this lower part of the ear. So again, you use the tragus to divide the upper inner part of the ear and the lower inner part of the ear. And if you massage around, just don't be shy, get your finger in there and massage around that lower part of the inner ear, that connects to the vagus nerve. And basically what it does is tells the body, okay, you can de-stress now. Okay, return to your native state, return to balance, let the stress go. And so that self-massage in there is another incredibly good way. We're going to be doing this for the rest of the webinar, aren't we?
I got to stop because I'm going to melt off my chair here, because this is what I do for myself all the time. And I always tell my clients, and I've shared this with the clients, you know, because this is one of the protocols that I teach them, is I say when you start to feel the gurgling in your stomach, you're doing a good job, because you're moving into the parasympathetic: rest, digest, restore.
Yes.
Right? So sympathetic is the active, like running from a perceived, even if the brain thinks, here's the power of thought, right? The brain doesn't understand the difference between real and imagined. So if you're constantly ruminating and you know, got this catastrophic thinking, you're constantly in that state of stress, that sympathetic nervous system. So everything that Janet's sharing with you today is to be able to get back to and restore them.
That's right.
Okay, so the vagus nerve, so we have a little under 10 minutes, and I know, so those are the physical pieces.
Those are the physical pieces.
Yeah, one more time. Here,
Here,
yeah,
spot,
right.
Collarbone, and then the center line. And then, not to be forgotten, the lower inner part of the ear that you can just self-massage.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got the physical pieces. Now I know you wanted to talk about herbs and essential oils. Where do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I mean, not all herbalism has to be complicated. So when people come to me with a variety of concerns, I'll make a customized herbal formula for them that's very specific to their constitution. But there's herbal medicine that's very readily available to the rest of us. And so when we're thinking about anxiety and stress, there are simple grocery store herbal teas that you can get that will help your nervous system calm down. What I find is the best way to do this is to combine. So if you have, and I know many of us are overly busy, but if you can square away 10 minutes to boil your water, make your tea, while your tea is brewing, you can be doing some acupressure, maybe using some essential oils, and taking the tea at the same time. Your body's getting the message through all these different systems, through touch and through taste and through smell, and even through the sight of the relaxing cup of tea. If you have a favorite mug, if you're like me, you have a favorite mug that you find, you know, calming and supportive. So you pull all of these pieces together, and it really helps the system calm down. So top teas for relaxation: chamomile is always a good one. Lemon balm, you can usually find, I think Traditional Medicinals brand has a lemon balm tea. Lavender is good. And, you know, again, all of these, you can make it as fancy as you want. You can source the herbs yourself and make it raw if you like actually looking at the petals. Or if you need a quick fix, just buy the bags, you know, the herbal tea bags. There's also Yogi Tea brand makes stress relief teas that have kava root in them. They may have valerian also. So kava, K-A-V-A, and valerian are both sedatives. So you don't want to drink too much, especially at a time when you need to be focusing, but especially for end of day or when you're in just a really heightened state. These teas are great for just getting the body to calm down a little bit.
Excellent. Okay, so I know Traditional Medicinals, that's one brand, right? And Yogi Teas.
Yogi teas.
Those are good. You know, the general, herbs that you can grow in the garden, because a lot of people are growing things now. I've got lemon, it's lemon balm, and then I also have thyme. And just some pinches of the thyme leaves, and it smells so good. Like you said, you're accessing the olfactory system, which helps to calm the amygdala down. We didn't go into the neurology of it this time, but just knowing how, like you said, you create this beautiful little ritual that is really steeped, like how I put that in with teas, steeped in self-love and self-care. And it doesn't take much to do a quick reset. So excellent. Okay, so we got the spots, we got the teas, we now essential oils.
Yeah, so there are a handful of essential oils that we know to be helpful for nervous system. Lavender, again, is one. Geranium essential oil, palmarosa. You can actually blend the three, like 5 drops each of lavender, geranium, and palmarosa. And then you want to mix it with a little bit of a carrier oil. So essential oils you can get poor skin reactions or sort of overexposure if you take them directly on the skin. So you'll want to take a teaspoon of coconut oil. You could use sweet almond oil. You can use olive oil if you don't have anything else, and mix these drops of essential oils in with the oil so that it's you have a good amount of substance there. And there are a couple ways you can do it. So you can do this directly in your hands, and then rub your hands together and cover your mouth, and just inhale. So you can do that. If you want to use an essential oil blend that's for calming, again, lavender, geranium, vetiver, bergamot, these are all wonderful calming essential oils. Mix them with a carrier oil on your hand. You could then do the acupressure and have your hands, are near your face, and you're smelling the calming essential oils while you're pressing. So you get a good balance. You can also apply them to the soles of your feet. Many people have noticed that a foot rub, a foot soak, or just like, I'll show you, just like literally rubbing the sole of your foot can feel incredibly calming and nurturing. It's what we do for young kids when they're upset, is we rub their feet. You can take your essential oil blend with calming oils and rub the soles of your feet. And that's also a good way to wind down and to tell your body, oh, this is care time. This is like getting into the bath time. This is like nighttime ritual when I was a kid. You sort of blend these calming procedures together.
What I love about what you're sharing too is all of this can be applied to your kids. So if you're watching and you're a parent and you've got a child that you want to help calm their system, like just how wonderful it is to think about rubbing, just sort of rubbing their forehead, which my mom, when we were young, not that we were stressed out, but I remember her, to put us to sleep, she would pretend like she was putting makeup on us.
So sweet.
She'd like so it sort of feels like just the human touch.
Yeah.
The piece about the essential oil is interesting, because I've thought about this, even with the masks, like what a good idea it would be just to put a little drop of a couple of essential oils. And as you're wearing your mask around, you're getting this smell that's sort of helping you to, manage your days and manage when you're out there and people are looking at you like you're a big fat germ,
Right. And there's actually, I'm going to be doing a webinar. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I'm going to be doing a webinar on green cleaning and home products. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is creating your own spray for your masks that includes both calming herbs and antibacterial, antimicrobial herbs. So you're actually getting that like essential oil based immune system support while you're breathing every breath, in addition to the calming. So
I love that. And we're just about ready to show the last slide for you, but I wanted to share the thieves oil. When you're talking about essential oils, thieves oil was this concoction that was apparently created by spice traders. This is the myth, or the history or story of it.
Yeah.
That they created this concoction of like 10 different essential oils, and they used it in order to protect themselves when they were going in to steal things from people who were dying of the plague. This was supposed to be like the story of it. And they were caught, and the king said, okay, we're not going to kill you. You have to tell us. I'll spare your life if you tell us how you were able to get to these places, into these places, and steal. So they used the thieves oil. You can get the recipe online.
Yeah.
It's a concoction of things, and you can use it for respiratory health. And then the other piece was, back in the day, I think it was the last plague, way back when, the doctors created this mask with a big beak.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the beak, they would put all those essential oils so that as they're drawing the air up, it was supposed to filter through the essential oil to potentially keep out all of the germs and the, you know, the disease. So essential oils, I mean, there's ancient stuff related to essential oils. So wonderful. Well, I'm gonna go to the end screen here because I want to share all your information. I am so happy that let me go here so we have it. Whoops, not that one. No, go back here. There we go. Thank you, Janet, so much. Such a wealth of information. I wanted to just share Janet's information for anybody who'd like to learn more about her. You know, the most important thing I think is to get on her list. So Janet, share how they can do that.
Sure thing. So yeah, I have a bunch of ways, whatever way you find is best to contact me, whether you're an Instagram or a Facebook person. But if you want all the information about what I'm offering and other health tools, lifestyle tools, email me at janet@janetacu.com and I'll get you on my newsletter list. And then on the meetup, the Bay Area Holistic Family Health Meetup, that's where I'm posting all of my upcoming online events and other notifications. So those two are probably the best way to get in touch. The email address for the newsletter, and then find me on the meetup group.
And you were talking about the cleaning, the healthy cleaning things. I don't see that in your upcoming list, but that
no, it's not scheduled yet. I think that'll be in September, October. So I'll post that on my meetup group when it's ready, but I'm excited about that one. I'm going to have non-toxic things you can make for yourself for cleaning products for your house, room sprays, linen sprays, mask spray, reed diffusers where you can diffuse scents into your room, but not using all the chemicals that are in the ones that you buy. So I'm excited to be offering that.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I'll definitely be on that one, and you'll have to bring that back to the community too, or we'll get the video on it. So wonderful. All right, I'm going to stop share so that everybody's got that. Janet, thank you so much. You're so committed to health and wellness for people. You bring such love and compassion to your work. So I'm just so honored that you came today and are a part of my community. I feel so blessed and so lucky. So more to come.
Likewise. So
thank you everybody for joining us today. I will definitely have a recording and I'll be sharing this with the community, and stay in touch. My meetup groups as well. I'm always offering good stuff for everybody. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Janet. Bye.
Bye.